Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 5 Minute Library. We have with us Neil De Silva. And as some of you may know, Neil De Silva recently showed up on our podcast a couple of days ago, and we discussed his books, Maya's New Husband 1 and Maya's New Husband 2. And yes, there's going to be part 3. And as Neil mentioned, it's going to come out next year sometime. So if you haven't listened to that episode, listen, go check it out right now. And in case you have, then join me in welcoming Neil back. Hi, Neil.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk with you and to be heard by your audience. Thanks so much.
So while Neil and I were setting up this call, really spooky things happened because my net, which works otherwise perfectly, crashed, and the Zoom meeting just got I just got knocked out twice for no reason. So every time we have an interaction that's related to horror, this tends to happen. And Neil reassured me that this is just normal. The ghosts are just letting us know that they're here, and I'm terrified. So I'm glad to be here with Neil and experience something that's so different from the ordinary. And
Let's let me tell you that now that you are speaking, and now this since our horror podcast is on the way, beware. Things can happen. Freaky things have happened with me when I'm writing horror. The lights start flickering and the curtains move. All these kinds of things do happen. So I'm just warning you. That's it.
okay. Hey, shit, I'm terrified. Okay. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna get some salt and keep. So, Neil, tell me, since you are so passionate about this genre and you're definitely one of the most influential and most successful authors in this genre in the country, what's your favorite part about working with this genre?
First and foremost, thank you for the praise. I don't know whether I am influential in any way right now, but I'm surely passionate about the genre. And I've been writing since 2015, 12 books out now, plus web series that I'm also writing on. And everything that I've worked on so far has been horror. So that's it's kind of a go to genre for me. The thing is, in writing for all these years, when I'm researching on my stories, when I'm checking out the trends of how horror is working, I see how Indian horror is growing. So this is a very good time to be a horror writer. Let me put that out front first. Our horror, as a genre, I mean, whether in literature or in film, has gone through a lot of phases. So the earliest phase that we all remember very fondly was the Ramsay phase. There was a kind of horror phase even before that in the black and white genre when we had films like Beast Salbaj, Mahal and all, but that is way too far back. But when I'm talking about the Ramsay genre, everybody remembers those films. Virana, Dark Bangla, Teh Khana, we grew up on those, right? I'm talking about the horror fans. So that was one kind of horror that we had, the supernatural monster horror, which is even today India's staple form of horror. We love our monsters. Let them be tacky, let them be whatever bad makeup you put on them, let there be jump scares, but we love those. We love those because they are backed by a good story. If you actually stop thinking about the production values of Ramsay films for a moment, but you think of them on in terms of their broad story content, you will see that they had fascinating premises to work with. So, we are suckers for story, and story in our horror is always prime, predominant. And since you're asking me about the horror in our country, the genre, this is the basic difference that we have between the horror of India and the horror of the West. Now, if you see the West, what kind of horror they produce, it's more situational, it's more atmospheric. Whether you take movies like the Paranormal Activity or you take Blair Witch Project, all these very big famous movies, they did not really have a very deep story to them, but it was more about the atmospherics. It was more about how the whole plot and premise built up. It was more about how the characters were caught in situations that they could not escape out of. The whole slasher genre, which is so popular in the West, is about that, right? Because we You see one slasher film, you know what's going to happen in the next. It's going to follow the same pattern, but not so in India. In India, we want our stories. This is where we differ or not. What kind of horror do we enjoy? Of course, there is the supernatural, which I already told you about. One more genre that is growing very well right now is the paranormal genre. So paranormal is where the basic difference between supernatural and paranormal is in supernatural, the ghosts are like the monsters are fantasy monsters. Like you will have some creature that or demon or something like that. Whereas in paranormal, these are human beings who died and have come back as ghosts or spirits. So when human beings become ghosts and spirits, that horror is scarier. So now we are going more into paranormal territory because the beliefs are opening up, and there are a lot of paranormal investigators in India now who are actually trying to investigate all these haunted locations whether ghosts are there or not. And paranormal is what is working. One more genre of horror that is also growing in India, which I'm also trying to explore, and I have done that through my husband, is psychological horror. It's the horror which is in the mind bending kind of horror, which you don't know which way it will go. So this is a horror. Of course, we have to still tap on a lot of horror genres. Like India does not have any sci-fi horror till now, or we do not have alien horror, or we do not have a lot of gore. We don't like gore. We don't like blood. In our horror movies also, we don't like blood and cutting up of people and all that. We keep away from that. We are a bit squeamish in that way. So yeah, these are the things that we don't touch yet, and that's how our horror is.
Wow, that was actually quite informational. I didn't know that there are so many different sub-genres within horror. I truly agree with you when you say that this is a great place to be in this industry because exploring this genre is something that's it's up and coming because if you see a lot of new trends, even if you say on Netflix, there's so many new horror or horror adjacent movies and series that have been coming out lately. A lot of our fantasy has been moving slowly into horror as well,
Yes.
because it's what it grabs attention. So, Neil, for the next, say, 1 to 5 years, are there any trends that you predict that might happen in this industry?
I think there will be a big growth in the horror genre, which is already happening. And that's because, as you said, the OTTs have latched on to horror as a genre. So Netflix is doing a fabulous job in putting out horror. But I'll also again tell that the content, the Indian Netflix content is not yet on par with the American Netflix content. So we have to still step up. Our production values are there. I'll not say that we don't have bad production values, but what is missing is the stories. But because now horror has a mass audience, it does have. Here also, let me set the record straight. A lot of people still say that horror is a niche genre and horror is something that is specific to a particular kind of audience. That's not true. Horror has mass appeal. And again, going back to Ramsay's times, there were times when a Ramsay movie would release with an Amitabh Bachchan movie and both would do huge business. So that is the kind of footfall that even a horror product can see in India. We are only waiting for the good products to come. In India, Three was a horror film that brought in the audiences. Bhool Bhulaiya did it this year, right? So we have this kind of scope, though we are more veering towards a horror comedy space, but that is a passing phase. One or two horror comedies won't work, then producers will stop making horror comedies. That will also happen. But what's enduring is we love our myths, we love our lore. So ghosts that come from our local areas, we love those.
So, I was just thinking about Ghoul because this reminded me of that. When I watched that, that was a subgenre that I really liked because that was truly terrifying. And that was exactly what you said about how we have so much myths and so much lore in India, so much of it. We are very culturally rich in lore and myths and so much fiction has also been coming out from all of this, such a great source of inspiration. And when I watched Ghoul, that's when I realized, oh my god, we got more into horror, and it worked so well. I think the production quality was incredible, the acting was incredible, the way they brought in the myths and how they portrayed it, it was perfect. So
That's
yeah,
what horror should be like. Horror should take from a relatable lore, something that people have heard, but people do not know what it is about. So, something that is still an enigma, a secret. Take
yeah,
that kind of, intersperse it in with your rich storytelling, good production values, and that's how horror basically works. Uh, Goal was a good example of it, though I felt that it did drag on a bit because it was made a little longer than it should have been. Maybe at the editing table, it should have sat for a while. But even then, the premise that it started with was good. And if we are mentioning cool, we should also mention series like Betal, and then there was also Bulbul. All of them very good shows, which are again lore based. Everything is based on a lore, and that's what we love to watch. Even if you see the movies, then we have even Stree when we talked about, or Pari, the other movie that did. They are all lore based. And here I'll do a little self promo, and there is my book Yakshini also, which a lot of people read. Then the reviews still keep coming. So Yakshini is also low, right? So Yakshini is a demigoddesses that might either give you a boon or a curse depending on how they are disposed at that time. So Yakshinis are something that even I explored as a part of the myth. And I'll tell you also this: as a horror writer, I'm constantly reading about Indian lore, and I am really astounded to see that every 100 kilometers you will find a ghost story. Not just one, there'll be many ghost stories. You just talk to the local people, and there will be ghost stories everywhere. And sometimes these ghosts have a name. Sometimes these
yeah,
ghosts are so much a belief system that it actually changes their lifestyle. Like we all know about the Bullet Baba in Rajasthan. I actually, if we have a very long time, if we have good time, I can tell you a lot of such stories. But I'll tell you about the Bullet Baba in Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan, there's this particular place, a highway, where a motorcyclist died in an accident. And this bike, bullet, it was kept at the police station because the person who he was, nobody came to know. So the bike was kept at the police station for a month or two till the time they tried to find out the identity of the man. They could not. Then they tried to dispose of the bike because it was not serviceable anymore. They tried to do that. But every time that they tried to discard the bike, it came back to the police station by itself. And this happened for a long time. They tried to throw it, give it away, keep it, hundreds of kilometers away from the police station, but it would come back the next day. This was so freaky. So then what they thought, people started believing that in this bike, the ghost of that person who died is still there, and that is why it's not going away. So what they did in the police station itself, they built a shrine around it. They started garlanding the bike, worshipping it, and all. And today, the Bullet Baba shrine, it is still there. And what people believe is, whenever you cross that highway, you have to stop and just pray a little bit to that bike and go. And then Bullet Baba's ghost will take care, and you will not have an accident. And this is a belief that is so Indian, so typically Indian, and
yeah.
so fascinating. So these are the kinds of stories you hear. You just have to move on with
Yeah. Wow, that's something that's so, and on one hand, it's so unusual to believe something like that, but then if it's actually happened, I think it's very hard for us as humans to wrap our brains around something so out of the matrix happening. It's very hard to believe, but it's also, I think, the lore that came out of it's very wholesome. So that's very cute. But for all our listeners, so I'm gonna do a little plug in here because our next episode with Neil is going to be all about myths and laws. So if you like the story about the Bullet Baba, make sure that you definitely check out our next episode because we're going to go into detail about this. Now, back to horror as a whole. So, Anil, you mentioned Yakshmi, and I know that you're working on playthings as well. And I also know you're working on a couple of web things. So, can you tell us in detail what? next for you? What does this year and the next year hold for you?
Thanks so much. I always enjoy talking about my books.
Go for
So,
it.
12 books so far, and of them, Maya's newest print is quite well known.
Yes.
Yakshini is well known, and I have books with paranormal investigators, haunted and spirits talk to me, which also did quite well. People still message me about those books because of the paranormal stories they have. So currently, what I'm working on, I have four projects. Of course, Playthings is coming out. Playthings is a middle grade horror book, which is written for a kiddie audience, 10 plus. So it's like Child's Play, Goosebumps, but in a very Indian style. The book should be out any day now because it is a Halloween release for this year. So any day it will be up on pre-order, and I'll be announcing it on my Instagram and everywhere else. Coming up next, maybe in the next month itself, post Diwali, is Sapna's Bad Connection, which is a digital horror, India's first digital horror it would be, because it's about a girl who is stalked by her boyfriend who died 8 years ago on the internet, on social media, everywhere that she goes. So it's about digital horror, a very psychological horror story, and it also touches upon mental illness. So I had a very tough time writing it. I'll be very honest. The book was 6 years in the making because I had to make sure that I was not getting insensitive at any point. Then I have Curse of the Maharani, which is a very spoofy kind of topic because I am very inspired by the Ramsey horror. And this is a kind of a parody book, which is, I won't say it is a horror comedy. It's not horror comedy. It is horror, but it is in the zone of the Ramsey stories. So it's a tribute kind of book. And then I have a book with HarperCollins coming up next year. It's untitled yet. This book is with Jay Alani, a very, very famous paranormal investigator. And I am going to write about some of the actual paranormal in cases that have happened in the world, in India, in India. And I'm going to talk about how these paranormal phenomena, what was the reality behind it? Was it a mental illness? Was it really a paranormal thing? So this time we are going to shatter myths because we are not going to play to the gallery. We are not going to tell ki, Jhar Phuk Baba, Nimbu Baba and all that. No, we are going to actually talk about it in a scientific way. So I'm very excited about that project as well. So as you see, four projects but very different from each other. And these will be on out in 2023. Along with that, I'm writing web series. About the web series, I'm not at liberty to disclose, but I'm writing four of them at the moment. They are all in different stages. And let's see when they roll out. Of course, my audience will come to know when I post it on social media. I'm also fingers crossed like that happens soon, but series take time.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see all the series that you write and also read all of the books that come out. I'm so excited for all your projects because it's genuinely one of the most chilling horror stories I've ever read. So I cannot wait. And I'm sure that our audience, for everyone who's listening, make sure that you follow Neil on Instagram. He is very, very active there. He posts about all of his projects. And also, if you're a fitness enthusiast, then definitely follow him because along with all of this, Neil also runs marathons, which is pretty cool. Um, so make sure you follow him. And this concludes the second episode. For all of those interested in knowing about myths, laws, and all kinds of paranormal experiences that Neil has had, stay tuned for our third episode with him.